Welcome to 5 Good Minutes. You're listening to today's inspirational message on the book of Galatians with Bjorklund.
So Galatians 2 has these two great issues, circumcision, table fellowship. And we've looked at Paul's desire to be faithful to the gospel in light of these issues, being a runner, a steward, a challenger, and a disruptor. And today I want to, in verse 19 through 21, just say that Paul has one more role, and this is of a surrenderer, to make it parallel. You could say as a crucified follower. Here's what the verses say. For through the law, I died to the law so that I might live for God. I have been crucified with Christ, and I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. The life I now live in the body, I live by faith in the Son of God who loved me and gave himself for me. I do not set aside the grace of God, for if righteousness could be gained through the law, Christ died for nothing. So why do I say this is a surrenderer or a crucified follower? It says, I have been crucified with Christ, and it's no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. There is a misperception sometimes that the idea of grace and the eradication of law following as part of the gospel message means that there is no standard, there is no expectation on the person who is a follower of Jesus Christ. And the idea here of Christ living in me is that the law has changed so that now the law is being followed, not the law of Moses, the law that was given, but the law in the sense of Christ in him. And probably the best way to explain this, and if you've heard me teach, you've probably heard me use something similar to this analogy before, but is similar to the transition that takes place in a romance when a couple starts to date and they move from kind of the initial phase into a more mature phase. And here's what I mean. Initially, if a couple starts to date, maybe it's over the top of trying to figure out one another, but there's a give and take of establishing some rules, some norms, some expectations. So for example, do you text the person in the morning? Do you text them at night? How often do you go on dates? How many times do you have to communicate with them during the day? Those are expectations. In a sense, you could say they're the law. It becomes, well, I expect you to do this if you're going to be my boyfriend, you're going to be my girlfriend. What happens, though, over time is you don't have laws in the sense of I must text every night, but you start to live in rhythm with that person in such a way that you die a little bit to yourself, not because your death to self means, oh, I'm sacrificing so much, but because you're so wanting to give to the other person what it is that they need and want. You're so in tune with them that it becomes almost a joy to you to try to anticipate and meet their desires and their needs. And this, I believe, is a good analogy of what it means to be crucified in Christ, to be a surrenderer, to give up and to say, I'm not trying to keep this Old Testament law. I am in relationship with the living God, and this relationship is Christ in me. And with Christ in me, now I surrender. And so being a disruptor for the gospel, a challenger of the gospel, is accompanied by living at the forefront of following Jesus, having Christ dwell in you in such a way that there's a sweetness to that relationship that permeates your entire being and is seen. And that's what makes your trusting with the gospel, not living a different gospel, even more effective. What wouldn't be effective is simply saying, well, yeah, I have this girlfriend, this boyfriend, I got married, but I don't do anything that she wants. I don't do anything he wants. No, it's a dying to self, but it's a joyful dying that God invites us to be part of. And this is part of Paul's journey in being faithful to the gospel. I hope that Galatians 2 points me to be faithful to the true gospel by being a runner, by being a steward, by being a challenger, a disruptor, and ultimately a sacrificer.
Thanks for joining us here today. There's a lot of great content to explore on Orchard Hill Plus and on the Orchard Hill main feed from the weekend. Have a great day.